Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. Tonight we are so excited to have with us the most beautiful, wonderful, amazing Gaye James, and all the things. That's her. Yes, right there, right there. So we're really excited to bring to you a lot of great information about a topic. Can I say that's tough to talk about? At least it's tough to express. Learning about expressive language, receptive language, how everything works and how we communicate in general is really a fascinating concept. And so I'm really excited to have Gaye here and explain the story that she's going to share with us this evening. So again, my name is April Tribe Juke, and I'm broadcasting from Kyle, Texas. And Gaye, where are you broadcasting from?
Hi, April. Hi, everyone. I am broadcasting from Dayton, Ohio, which is home of aviation, where the Wright brothers lived and worked and created their plane that they took to North Carolina and drove. But anyway, I'm here from Dayton, Ohio, and I'm excited about being here tonight and sharing with you my book that was just out and the topic of selective mutism.
Wow, the understanding about the little history there of the little town over there, that's fun. That's really great to see. And so thank you so much for sharing that. We're really interested in this topic of selective mutism because when we're quiet and silent and not being able to use some of our voice, it's not that we don't have the voice. It's really an interesting perspective that we'll dive into this evening. So first of all, Gaye, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Gaye James, as you mentioned, and I do home care physical therapy by day, and then I help motivate others through anxiety like selective mutism on the other hours that are left over in the day. So as a selective mutism advocate.
So in the concept of selective mutism, you mentioned a word that maybe a lot of people don't understand is really connected to it, which is anxiety. And we all understand anxiety, and I'm sure many of us have been dipped in it in such an interesting year. So with the basis of that, just explain what anxiety is and what can happen in the body in general, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into the selective mutism.
Yeah. So for such a long time, I thought everyone had anxieties because I sort of used that word too loosely, and I used it to describe as stress is what I used it for. But really, anxiety goes beyond just normal stress. It is the brain sort of puts up this block, and you just can't deal with whatever obstacle that is in front of you that's causing your anxiety to flow, that trigger. Oftentimes we need, here I'm trying to sign. I'm not signing. So sorry. I don't know any signing. Okay, no, I know little signing. But anyway, so as far as anxiety goes, there's so many different types of anxiety, and what my child dealt with selective mutism, which you said, we will dive into here in just a moment. And it is actually a type of anxiety. It is where the brain just doesn't let you do what it is that you're wanting to do. And that, in a nutshell, is sort of what anxiety is about.
Okay, and so with this block that happens, it seems to impact the way that you are able to verbally, vocally express language, communication, your thoughts, your needs. This, I think, is very, very, you really have to understand this. So people in the audience tonight, if you're here, please pop in, let us know what it is you're thinking about, because I will share with myself. This is something really interesting because expressing the needs and the wants for who you are, to share that with someone else, is the human experience. That's part of the connection. However you communicate it, obviously through sign, through verbal things, even with picture supports, there's ways to communicate. Now think of the thing where you've got something that's just rolling around in your head and you want to express it, and you really are physically stopped from expressing it. It's not just that, oh, I had a loss for words. You're actually stopped. Now, some of the things that I go through when I'm communicating and helping children, I work with a lot of people who are on the autism spectrum. And within the spectrum, we have, goodness, we've got people that just can't stop talking, and others that have never really talked and expressed the, we'll say, the traditional way that you would communicate. Now, they're always communicating. The opportunity to express yourself is huge. And I will never forget watching my sons just tantrum and tantrum. And I know, do you want this? Did you want? I was a complete guessing game and never knowing. And screaming was his only communication. It was tough because we got those labels of, well, he's possibly this and possibly that. And he ever thought about mutism? And we were like, we just want to communicate. And so that was my driving force. That's a little experience for myself. But Gaye, tell us about your son. I imagine when he was born, you share a story that he wasn't silent from the get-go. So share a little bit about that.
Well, selective mutism, actually, just kind of backing up, a child, I personally believe they are born with it. And what it is, it's called selective mutism. It's not because they select to be mute. It's because they are unable to speak in select situations or certain situations. So they can be completely fine and usually are completely normal verbal at home in a comfortable environment. And so, yes, from the get-go, he was chatty and loud and energetic and fine. And so, years can go by when you don't even realize there's something wrong. And until, you're in a position where that child just isn't able to speak when you expect them to. And that doesn't happen until they're probably about preschool age. And so you don't realize it oftentimes until that point. So yeah, he was completely normal when he was really, really little because we just hadn't been exposed to it yet. So
I'm really glad that you clarified that the selection is really in the situational part.
Yeah.
If it's not a place of we'll say the word comfort, or a place that you're familiar enough with, or whatever, that situation can really be that trigger that it then selects of nothing really happens. It comes out. So it looks like Lori is here. Thank you, Lori, for popping in. She says that, we all want to be known and understood. When something challenges, that we desire, we will try to find another way. That's a really interesting part to kind of jump into a little bit. Was that a way for yourself? Were you thinking, well, we got to find another way? Or was it, we need to help lower the anxiety? Or when did you discover that anxiety was the core of this?
Well, I think from the very beginning, I realized from the first experience when he just looked like this deer in the headlights of a car kind of reaction when someone was asking him a question, and then he wanted to hide behind my legs. And so that just, I don't know, I guess common sense said, oh my gosh, he's reacting in an anxious manner. And so I think from the beginning, I kind of knew that. And then, but I didn't realize he had selective mutism. I didn't know. I thought he was shy. He wasn't shy at home, wasn't shy around other people. I just didn't, I had never heard of selective mutism. So I didn't know what was going on with my child. And we ended up finding out through the babysitter actually came up with the term. She had seen a special on a talk show about selective mutism, and she gave me that information and said, oh my gosh, I think this is what your son has. And so, I just, I didn't realize it until I read about it, until I researched, and then of course took him to a psychologist, got him diagnosed. And then, that's when we had a definitive diagnosis that this is anxiety driven. As far as selective mutism, it is, it is anxiety, but what it is it's a fear. But many people who have selective mutism don't don't really regard it as a fear. They said it's not really fear. Your fear is of heights, a fear of spiders or snakes or whatever. And so they don't sort of compare it to that. But we have this little part in our brain, and it's called the amygdala. And there's actually a pair, but the amygdala is what controls our emotion, and it's how we respond to, to fear. Our amygdalas will kick in when there's a threat, a perceived threat outside. So if I see a spider walking across, my computer towards me, I don't have to stop and think to scream and run. My amygdala perceives that threat, knows right away, and makes my body react very, very fast before I even know what's going on. And it gets me out of that threatened position. So that is how someone with selective mutism responds when they are directed, when people direct attention to them and ask them specific questions or call them by name, make eye contact. Their amygdala is kicked in because they perceive that as a threat, and automatically, this response happens. This fight or flight kicks in. Their vocal cords become paralyzed, so no sound is going to come out, even if they want it to. And they just, oftentimes they freeze, and are unable to respond. And so that's definitely an anxious sort of behavior, right? An anxiety reaction. So just wanted to clarify a little bit about that.
That's so true. And I really appreciate the clarification, because we want people to understand, a different side or an exposure to understand when we have those responses, what they mean, and if we see it in other people, how possibly we could help support them, not as a takeover or as a helicopter parent or anything like that, but as awareness. I think the more aware we are, the more understanding and empathy we can have for everything that is going on. So Lori, Angie, she says, hello there. Olivia's here. She says, hello, Gaye. And Lori then says, it sounds really scary for a child to experience.
Yes.
So,
well, yes. Just imagine their little bodies. They don't understand this reaction. They don't know why it's happening. They don't know how to stop it from happening. And so until they learn how to deal with those physical reactions that happen in their body, they're not going to be able to speak. They're not going to be able to control it. So that is something that they have to learn how to deal with. And they don't just outgrow it. They truly have to take the steps to overcome.
So what are some of those steps to overcome?
Well, it's kind of different for each person, unfortunately. So oftentimes people have to get professional help through a psychologist or a speech language pathologist, even though it's not that they can't speak. And even though it's an anxiety issue, a speech therapist does have, or many, not all, do have programs for selective mutism on exposure and, just these different types of kind of easing into, starting with trying to move their lips and make the sound. Like if you want to say hi, then you start with mouthing it, and then eventually you start to make this whisper, and then you get a little louder. And they have these different techniques that you can do, but it all boils down to just practicing and easing into it, and gradually increasing the exposure of this fearful situation. And that's what helps the most.
So with your son, as you started to see some of this progress, what was something that was successful for him?
Yeah, so my son, he was unable to speak in school for 3 years, preschool, kindergarten, first grade, and even second grade is when he just started to speak. And he was able to talk to like one or two friends. And so it was happening. So the very biggest success was second grade, and all the kids had to do reports on a country of their choice. And my son, I think it was Denmark that he chose to write about. And he I couldn't believe it. They had all the parents and grandparents that wanted to come during the day, and we all joined in the audience and sat there, and the kids got to read their reports. And there was my son, and he had his paper, his little report, and he was reading it, and he never looked up, but he said it. And that was like when I knew he was doing it. He was getting through. He was learning to overcome the selective mutism.
Wow, that's a great story, a great success. We have a question here from Gary. And so that's a great question. Was your son able to explain to you what was happening? I'm assuming he means what the feeling was like when this anxious, part would start to take over. Was he able, maybe when he was older, to explain what it felt like?
No, not really. Especially when he was going through it when he was little, he had no idea. I would talk to him, what's going on? I don't know. That was the answer over and over, because he didn't know and he didn't understand it. And so I had to be the grown-up. I had to be the one to try to understand. And the one thing I did understand was he wasn't doing it on purpose. He wasn't trying to be defiant. He wasn't trying to, to push my buttons. Or he was just trying to be a kid dealing with this anxiety that he didn't understand. And so as he grew older, it took him quite a long, he's now an adult, a young adult, and he's finally kind of getting maybe a little bit of an understanding of what he went through. So he still has trouble expressing, exactly how he felt back then. And he still doesn't quite understand how the anxiety stopped him from speaking, but he knows it did. So no, he wasn't really able to.
Okay.
Good question, though.
It is a great question, because when we can understand from somebody's perspective, that really can clarify a lot.
I know.
So what were some of the therapies that your son went through?
So this is quite a few years ago, since my son is now 23 and he was 4 when he was diagnosed. So it was about 19 years ago. And very little was known about selective mutism at the time. And we took him to a psychologist when he was 4 to have him diagnosed. We already knew when he was 3 that he wasn't speaking outside of the family, the immediate family. So we knew there was an issue. But at 4, we got that definite selective mutism title, that label. And took him to the psychologist. He said he had never had a patient with selective mutism. So there was no experience there. He did speak to a couple of coworkers to try to get, some kind of a therapy plan. And he said the biggest thing was to not bring attention directly to my son if he spoke or if he didn't speak. So that is the fear. It's almost like a social anxiety, where those that are struggling with the selective mutism, the worst thing you can do is this, all your attention right up there on them, directing everything to them. That will shut them down in a heartbeat. So since I saw what my son was going through and I saw how he responded, I just sort of tried to do the opposite and try to treat him like as if he always talks, because he does always talk at home. And if we were in public and someone would say, "Hey, young man, what's your name?" Well, I knew he wasn't going to say it, but I didn't want to just automatically jump in and answer for him, because what if today is the day he's going to do it, right? So I had to give him an opportunity. So I would always just kind of hold off and let him have a moment. He would get really pale and really scared looking. And then I would say, this is my son, I would introduce him and then go on and kind of change the subject. So, but with that's what the psychologist said, just don't bring attention to him. And then unfortunately, and this is in the book that I have written recently, the psychologist kind of went against his own, his advice. So we stopped going to the psychologist because he kind of had a setback there. I couldn't find anyone else in the area that specialized in selective mutism or even hadn't heard of it. So I researched and kind of took it on my own to do the therapy. And we just continue to like expose him in different situations that would encourage him to speak. I would give him an opportunity. When he didn't do it, then I would go ahead and answer. But I just kept doing it because, like I said, I didn't know that one day when he would talk. And it did. It happened. He finally did.
Wow. The therapies, when we take them on, try to work through them, make sure that, it generalizes the skill in as many places as possible. It is good, tough work, but like you say, it keeps allowing the opportunity. And then when they're able to and make those small breakthroughs and the next step and the next step and the next step, the results are the place where we want to see. It's really, really powerful. So I like what Lori says. She says, I think it's key as parents to understand your child isn't being defiant, but he's actually suffering. And when we can see that, it's it's really a mindset shift where we stop thinking, well, they're doing this to me. Yeah. It just makes me laugh, thinking, really? They don't have the concept and the mindset to think, today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to bother so-and-so and so-and-so by never answering them. Oh, I've got a stellar plan. Here we go. No, they don't think that way. But unfortunately, the response of many adults have that. Like, oh, I can't believe he was so defiant to me. I just have to shake my head like, they just don't plan that way. That's not part of who they are. And, the ones that might, they're so far out on the outlying part of the spectrum. Right. It's less than whatever percent. It's so small. So really, there isn't that big grand plan to get someone today. I apologize for laughing, but I think it's just kind of ridiculous when people kind of get that so offended that way. Like, take a chill. Yeah. It's all good. So, Gaye, is there a story within your book that you would like to share with the audience tonight?
Well, there are several different stories in my book, but one of them that I actually, for anyone that joined in the book launch recently, they got to hear this. But I love this story, and it's when I introduced both of my boys to my husband, and I was a single mom dealing with this anxiety for a while. It was really challenging, but I met my husband, and once I knew that he was a keeper, then I decided it was time for him to meet the boys. And so I introduced the oldest. Well, then they knew he was coming over to meet them. And so the youngest, the one with selective mutism, he came running out of his bedroom and he jumped onto my husband's lap. And when he did, he farted really loudly. And so my husband was like, that's my boy. So it was hilarious. It was just a bonding moment right then. So he didn't actually use his voice, but at least he did make sounds. So that was definitely overcoming mutism. Yeah. If you can't make it, the noise come this way, let it go that way.
Oh, that's a great story. That's really funny. So, Gaye, your book, Beyond the
Living Beyond
Living Beyond the Silence. The title for your book is really powerful because you're helping us to see a future, to see that there's hope there. And so within your book, allowing that hope to be there. And you say that you have groups that you are helping now with people who are all around the world. They're even asleep tonight and they're missing this because of the different time changes and such like that. But what do you hear in those groups about this? Do they have different stories or how is the help going with those groups?
Well, so I have two different Facebook groups. One is just generalized anxiety, and the other one is for selective mutism. And so within the group, it's a smaller group, and so it's kind of a safe place for people to just reach out and talk about their struggles. And oftentimes I'm giving some information from what we've dealt with. And I do have people that contact me privately. And I guess even though the Facebook group is small enough, sometimes I think they just feel more comfortable. I mean, this is almost like like I said, a social anxiety. So it's difficult for them to even talk in front of, 150 people. So one-on-one is easier for them. So they'll send me private messages and just saying how, sometimes they just lose their hope. And will I ever overcome this? Will I ever be able to be normal? And so the biggest thing is when I hear someone saying, I'll never be able to whatever, or I can't do this, I can't talk, I'll never be able to talk, then I need to stop them right there, because they're shutting themselves down. They're saying these words and they're letting their brain hear the words, and they're going to believe them. And unfortunately, it's like a self-fulfilled prophecy, and that's what's going to happen. So we got to change the mindset. You got to start with being more positive, trying to turn those negative statements into a positive one. And instead of being self-limiting, trying to figure out, okay, instead of saying I can't, let's say yet. And instead of saying I'll never be able to, say, let me find a way to. And once they can begin focusing on a more positive view, then the hope is there, and they can get past, this anxiety or any anxiety that they're dealing with.
That is so true. The hope is something that's very, very helpful, that pulls us through. It does help us to get beyond whatever the challenges are that's right here in front of us. Now, John Hewlin, he asks a great question, and he says, what ages are within your group?
All ages are invited to the Selective Mutism group. Honestly, most of them are adults. There are a couple of children in the group.
So that the concept is, do they themselves have it, or are they supporters of someone, maybe parents or aunt, uncle of someone else? Is it kind of a mix?
It is a mix, because I feel like we're all involved. And you don't have to have selective mutism yourself to be able to be dealing with it. I didn't have it. My son had it. Or I shouldn't say had as past tense. Selective mutism, you don't actually, you learn to overcome, but you never get cured, because there's more than just the verbal. You can learn to use your voice and communicate, but there's always going to be some residual anxiety issues that you have to continually deal with throughout your life. Anxiety doesn't just go away, and so that's something that they have to keep working on. But within the group, we do have, the parents of children that have selective mutism, or adults that have selective mutism, or teenagers that have it themselves, or aunts. We have just a variety of people, because I think we're all impacted. When one person we love is struggling, it affects everyone.
It does affect everyone. The impact of what communication and the lack of communication that can happen, it really puts up barriers. And when we can find a way to give them hope so they can go beyond the silence, that, wow, what a beautiful opportunity. So you also said that at your book launch, your son, who's now 23, he was able to do something at that book launch. Can you share that story with us?
Yeah, I was so proud of him. So the MC towards the end of the book launch invited him up and actually interviewed him in front of a live audience and in front of the streaming online audience. And it was amazing. He did such a great job and was just very articulate and confident. I'm sure inside it was just like, oh, but outside he was cool and collected and had it together. And it was so emotionally packed. And I ended up in tears, and I barged in and hugged him right away towards the end of the interview. I couldn't help it. So it was just an awesome moment. And I actually had several people after that reach out and just tell me what amazing hope that they had for their own child to see my son be able to do that. And he's just throughout the book, I mentioned the accomplishments that he has made. And, he didn't start like that. Honestly, you go 3 years in silent. I mean, he was verbal at home and when he was in comfortable situations, but 6 hours a day at school, no talking. If he goes to church, if he goes to in sports, no talking anywhere. And so that takes that's a very challenging position. And as a parent, watching my son go through this and not be able to just magically fix him, I at one point kind of questioned, is he ever going to get past this? But I thought, no, don't do this. I have to, you do a lot of praying, and I knew we have to we're going to get through this. But I truly see how parents can lose faith and that their child can overcome, because when you're in the moment, that's all you see. And you can't even imagine life being, anything different than that. And so it's just amazing to see my son making all these accomplishments and looking normal. So yeah, it was exciting.
That is really exciting. And congratulations, Trevor, and all of the hard work and everything is paying off. So that gives everyone a lot of hope. And I hope that as we replay and share this interview again, that anyone who might be new to your group will again feel of that, like, okay, we can do it, and just keep pushing through, because all have a voice and all have things to say. And the concept of that connection with humanity is really beautiful. So thank you, Gaye, for being here tonight, for expressing this to all of us. We are so thankful. Thank you, everybody who has popped in here and connected with us. And John asks, what's the best way what is the best way we can connect with you? She's got her website out down there, and any other ways that you want to share with us, Gaye.
Yeah, so gayjames.com is my website, or the Facebook group is the name of my book, Living Beyond the Silence. Well, it's Selective Mutism - Living Beyond the Silence. That's
excellent. Thank you so much. John says thank you, because this can help so many other people. Where can we get a hold of your book?
Oh, thank you. Anywhere books are sold, or most places books are sold. Amazon, we can stick a link, below. But yes, it's available right now worldwide. Well, not everywhere in the world, but in a lot of places.
That's right, in a lot of places. So thank you, John, for giving us those, great hints and support. And thank you, Lori. And we had Nick pop in here. Thank you, Nick. And Gary and Angie, Olivia, thank you all for coming and being such a great support to Gaye. Join her Facebook group, reach out to her. And if you know of somebody that could use this support, please reach out. Again, say the name of your book one more time, loud and proud.
Living Beyond the Silence by Gaye James.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, and we will catch you again. Thank you for coming to the Beacon of Light podcast. We'll see you.